So welcome. I am Camille. I'm the head of content and programs at PressPad, and I'll be your host today. Whereas Lucy, who's also highlighted, is our guest, and she's our expert to talk about trade and membership magazines and how you can make money where actually you don't think it's necessarily super sexy, but actually it's interesting and you can make money. Here we go. In terms of housekeeping, one introduction. In terms of housekeeping, you can see, I hope, the subtitles just below, and I'll be sharing in a second the auto transcripts that you can use as well if you'd rather have it on the side or look at it a bit later. Also, we're on Twitter, and you can use the hashtag PressPadRemote, which to ask questions or to share your feedback, your highlights, how much you loved talking about trade and membership magazines. And you can ask your questions through the hashtag PressPadRemote or just ask questions in the box below. And then without further ado, hi Lucy.
Hi.
Welcome. So Lucy Miller is so many things. Lucy is a freelance editor and writer, but also a deputy editor of Optometry Today. They called her back because they couldn't live without her as an editor, and just were like, Lucy, just come back as editor. And then, but she's also worked at other places, various places, which I hope, Lucy, you'll mention a bit throughout your presentation. And including where we met as a national student. Sad story, but it doesn't no longer exist, but very happy ending because we got to meet each other. But to go back to trade and membership magazines, Optometry Today is the membership magazine of the Association of Optometrists. And you can find Lucy and all her calls out for information on optometrists or Love Island on Twitter at Lucy Miller 321, and on Instagram for more food porn type of information, or Lido porn on Wednesdays at Lucy EM 321. And Lucy, I'll let you finish your introduction.
Thanks, Camille. Yeah, thank you for pointing out my many varied interests there. Follow me for stories featuring one cat and Lidos and nothing else. Potentially some brunch. Great, well, thank you for coming. I will try to make this as interesting as possible. Obviously, trade and membership magazines have not got a great rep for being the most thrilling places, but I think there's real value in them, and we'll talk a bit about how you can make those kind of roles interesting, because as I've found over the last kind of 18 months, you definitely can. I will switch to share my screen now, so if you just give me a second. Okay. Okay. Has that worked?
That's perfect, Lucy.
Okay, great. I don't know if you can
just
see my videos at the side. Shall I close that?
No, that's fine. We can't see that video. If you just click on present, and then that will
hiding. Hang on.
Next to the yellow button. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hiding behind my videos. There we go. So that is me, obviously. I am a freelance editor and writer, as Camille said. I, for context, have been deputy editor of Optometry Today, which is the membership magazine for the Association of Optometrists, which is 87% of optometrists in the UK are members. So we've got quite a large audience, obviously. And previous to that, I worked at the National Student, as Camille said, and also in the interim did a few sort of random contracts and freelanced various places. So I worked at universities, I've worked sort of in charities and freelanced for Grazia, Stylist, Positive News, amongst others. But this is my kind of main gig at the moment. And I, as of this week, have gone back to full-time doing the deputy editor role that I was doing until the end of the year. So we've had a shift around in the team and I'm back there, which I'm very happy about. And I will obviously explain to you why that is. Just what we'll cover in this masterclass very briefly before we go into it. What are trade and membership magazines? I'm aware that people might not know what they are. I did not know what a membership magazine was until I was interviewing for a job on one. So I know that, and at that point I was 29, so I am sure that not everyone does know what they are. How I ended up deputy editing a membership magazine, my sort of journey up to that point, the benefits that I found in that kind of role, why it's a good thing to go into, and the highlights so far for me, and then finally how to find these kind of roles. And obviously I hope I'll persuade you to look for some whilst I'm doing this class. Cool, next slide. What is trade or membership magazine? So they are quite different, but I'm going to obviously be talking mainly about membership magazines, as that's my experience and background, but I will cover trade a little bit as well, because there are obviously similarities. So a membership magazine usually will sit as part of a wider communications team within an association under the leadership of a comms director. So our structure is obviously there's the CEO, and then there's a comms director, and then the editor, and then the deputy editor, and then there's various people, other people within the team, and I manage two of them. So it's kind of, there's difference between comms and journalism, and this obviously has marketing aspects to it as well, because it's for an association. So it's good to know sort of different ways to approach that, which we might get into a little bit more later, because there's very subtle differences from kind of working on a membership or trade magazine and in, you know, like an old school newsroom at like a national paper. You go about things in a slightly different way, but we'll talk about it later. Membership magazines, in my experience, are kind of a vital mouthpiece for the organisation. They're how the organisation will get out its sort of message on policy, on legal stuff, on changes to the industry, and also lobbies for members and things. So we share that work through our features and our breaking news and things. Multiple revenue streams for both trade and membership. Some will have membership fees. We have membership fees. Our magazine costs about, I think it's like £9.95 an issue, and it's paid annually. So obviously that's quite a significant sum for a magazine, and that keeps it afloat, alongside the advertising and anything else, any other income that we can get in non-pandemic times, like events, of which we do quite a lot. Also, we run educational sort of things online. They've got education that they have to do as part of their career and staying registered with their sort of registry bodies. So we run those as well, which again ties them in and keeps people paying their membership fee, because they need that to continue doing their job. So that is sort of a way to the audience sort of compelled to keep getting the magazine. Obviously very niche. Optometry Today is a magazine for optometrists, specifically optometrists who work in practice and in hospitals. There are other sort of parts of the industry that cover other healthcare, but also other parts of optics, like people like surgeons and things. We don't cover those, so it's niche even within our industry. One thing that is good to know is that because they are professional magazines for a professional audience who are probably quite affluent, as you obviously have to be affluent if you spend £10 on a magazine every other month, that's quite a sort of middle sort of career level thing to do. So people are quite affluent, they've been in their career quite a long time. So the focus is often on print, but in my experience, the editors and sort of the comms directors really want to push digital growth and are really invested in those skills, and want people with those skills. So we have a full-time video editor who goes out to shoot interviews sort of when he can. Obviously he's coming back into that now post the lockdowns. They really want people with those kind of skills that you would have learned at university in the last few years. So that is a really good thing to know. People with social media skills are really, really in demand at these kind of places, because they want to appeal to the next sort of generation coming up into the industry. So they don't want to kind of just be seen as purely print and not dynamic. They want to really share those skills. So that is a good thing to push forward if you are looking for that this kind of role. Your sort of digital skill and sort of innovation in that area will be really, really valuable. And yes, news, essentially what we put out is news and features on the specific industry. So that's overall the top line of what these kind of publications do. So fashion, aerospace, pharmaceuticals, for example. And we'll go on to talk about a few examples now. So these are just a few kind of off the top of my head. Obviously Optometry Today is in there. Drapers is the sort of fashion and retail trade magazine that's been around for like about 150 years. I think it's really, really well established. I think it's the oldest trade magazine in the country, maybe the world, don't know. Might have made that up, but it's really well established. It covers all aspects of fashion and retail. And then we've got Business Travel of Corporate Travel, a magazine called Drinks Business, which covers beer, wine and spirits. The Drum is marketing and media, so people within marketing and advertising, more so than like journalism, will be aware of the Drum as like a massive sort of mouthpiece for their industry. And then we've got the imaginatively named Hospitality for hospitality managers, and Screen International for film, and EMG Gold, which is part of the European Medical Journal, and that's for pharmaceuticals. So these are just some examples that I am aware of, sort of know of. There are hundreds and hundreds. Yeah, so we look at some front covers. You'll be able to see these front cover splashes are, I think, quite striking. This is our most recent Optometry Today cover. This issue was themed around, there's an extra qualification that optometrists can do that allow them to like prescribe things rather than having to refer to a hospital or GP, which is obviously great for the patient. So we really encourage, the association really encourages people to go after that and tell the stories of people who have done that and taken on, you know, extra roles and stepped up. So that issue was themed around that. And that's what the IP crowd means. We love a pun. And then Drinks Business, obviously this absolutely delightful looking cocktail, not very seasonal for the weather we've been having this week, but yeah, nice sort of summery, very sort of clean splash. And I think one thing that I wanted to kind of say with these publications is you are often really able to, well, in my experience, in a team of sort of 8, everyone gets involved in planning the front cover, everyone has a say, it's proofed by everyone has a chance to put their ideas forward for it, which can be really nice because you don't always get a chance to do that, especially if you're a bigger publication. So I've really appreciated being able to have input in that way. And then yeah, you feel fully part of the product, which is really great. We'll look at some more. I think I've got some more on the next slide. So yeah, this one, Business Traveller, obviously again quite striking with that shot of Istanbul and like nice chic neutrals, which is great. Screen International, and then Hospitality. I think that is that looks like that cover is COVID themed, as we expect it would be. Yeah, I think they all look quite nice, and I hope you agree. Cool. I ended up in this position. So just my background very quickly. I did an English degree. Whilst I was doing that from second year, I kind of thought I would want to be in journalism. Tried some work experience placements, decided that was the case and I did want to be. They were on local newspapers, kind of stayed with my grandparents, anywhere that I could sort of get to from my parents' house, which is in Yorkshire. Did basically every newspaper up there. And then broadened out into Lancashire as well, and did some over there as well. So tried to get in wherever I could, really. Then I wanted to move to London, so I moved to London 6 months after I graduated, did my NCTJ at News Associates in Wimbledon, which I think has now moved to Teddington, maybe Twickenham. It was in Wimbledon when I did it. It was great. Would recommend. Whilst I was doing that, I did sort of digital and national paper internships. So I did 2 weeks at the Independent, and I did some time on the Guardian travel desk as well. And that is when I started at the National Student, where I was supposed to be there for 3 months. And many years later.
And we joke about the just 3 months for a second.
I do seem to have a habit of going places for what is a short amount of time and then refusing to leave, which I would recommend everyone does. Not against doing that. I was supposed to be at OT for a year, and it's now been, well, it was February 2020, so I don't know. But 18 months. Yeah, I love not leaving places. You can't get rid of me if you employ me. So I was there for 7 years. Camille came during that time, and we think everyone is very, very glad she did. And then that magazine closed down. So I was made redundant, which gave me the opportunity to sort of take my settlement and have some cash in the bank and try freelancing, which I did, which went relatively well. So I mentioned some of the bylines before, but my kind of main thing, I was trying to be sort of sensible. So I took on contracts, most of which were like 3 days a week, and then freelanced in the other 2 days. So I worked at a radio station, which was also a charity, like that was its model. I went to Queen Mary University of London and did a content contract there, on like a comms sort of consultancy basis. Then I started at the at Optometry Today. So those contracts, and that initially when it started, I did freelance reporter cover before I became the deputy editor, and that was 3 days a week as well. So I found it really valuable to balance contracts with like less secure freelancing. And we'll talk about how you get contracts like that, because membership organisations often will take on contracts like that, sort of short term or shift work and things, and it can be a bit more stable than just freelancing. So we'll talk about that later. All of that was via recruiters, which they're quite underused in journalism, I think, and that's quite an error, because they have been possibly the most helpful part of my last 2.5 years. So I would highly recommend people speak to recruiters, especially the ones that I will mention later, because they have been pretty much gold dust for me. So started the maternity cover in March 2020, perfectly timed at the start of the pandemic, which was great luck on my part, because obviously I had a secure contract for the first year of the pandemic, and then I have been doing 1 day a week since April with them, and freelancing as well. So that's when I became senior content editor, and then at the end of August, so literally from this Tuesday, I started a new contract as deputy editor again, full time, until the end of the year. So this is what I mean about sticking around. You just tell people that you're not leaving, and they'll keep you, in my experience. Cool. I can't remember what's on the next slide, but we will see. Okay, benefits of this kind of role. I think I might have cut off my last bullet point. So I might not get through this entire list, but we'll see. Cool. So the benefits are, one real key benefit that I think people don't necessarily know about enough is the chance to really hone sort of those traditional reporting skills, chasing people down, knowing what the story is, or that kind of thing, like getting the relevant quotes, that stuff. That's a really big part of the magazine where I am now, but I guess all of them. I've spoken to people at Draper's in the past who are so keen on exclusives. Like exclusives and bringing in news is huge. If you want to do that, and that's where your kind of interests lie, which I think is a key reason a lot of people do get into journalism, this is a really good kind of publication to do that on, largely because you're not kind of, it's incredibly competitive to get roles, like reporter roles on like national press. It's much more manageable, I think, to look for like niche publications and hone those skills. And then if you want to go into sort of national media, like more traditional media later, you've got those under your belt already. So I would consider it if that's where you are and you're starting out, or even if you're not starting out. I mean, it's always good, I think, to keep those skills sort of up to date, so you can do that in these kind of publications without a huge amount of risk. Really, you're allowed to kind of make mistakes. It's a bit less pressure, which I think a lot of people will appreciate and do appreciate. Good salaries compared to local or regional news. I don't know. I'm not going to speak about our specific salary bandings because I don't think that HR at the Association of Optometrists would have very many nice things to say to me if I did that. Although I am very much up for being open and transparent about pay, I don't think in this instance I am allowed. So all I will say is, if you are aware of local and sort of national reporter salaries on newspapers, you're going to get a lot more money if you go somewhere niche, and that extends to other niche publications other than trade and membership magazines. But obviously that's what we're talking about here. So that is something that people should definitely be aware of. Our kind of our like team, people who I manage in that team are on good wages. So that is really nice to see in sort of second job kind of roles. So yeah, so that is something that people need to know about as well. I think that there's a lot of variety. I mentioned the input on front covers earlier, and I showed you some of them. Web projects are something that I take on quite often, developing new ideas for features. I think that membership and trade magazines really don't want to be seen as like staid, because they've got a reputation possibly being quite dry. I think there are things you can do to make them not, and to keep it interesting. I think in my experience, a lot of editors are really, really keen to get everyone's ideas all the time and to keep sort of changing things and mixing things up. Like the features that I work on have changed in the time that I've been there, and that's with input from the team and things. And we've brought in new features, and things are quite dynamic. So your ideas kind of don't get shot down. People are quite receptive to changing things and moving quite quickly on making things better and responding to stuff. So that's good too. Opportunity, that feeds into the next bullet point, which is opportunity and space to experiment with social media, video, and in-demand digital skills. We've spoken about that already. I think it's just really key that they don't want to sort of stand still, and they are also keen to like bring in younger audiences. So they want to have a really strong social media presence and do lots of video and stuff. So they, at the same time as needing the sort of traditional reporter skills, like each are as equally as important as each other. So that's good to know. Multiple revenue streams means it's kind of, as I spoke about this earlier, but it just offers a level of stability, which I think a lot of people value when the industry is quite difficult. I mean, we all know about closures all the time. There's lots of pivots. There's a lot of things that unexpectedly close down. Me and Camille know about that. It feels nice to be somewhere that's stable. It's felt nice to be somewhere that's stable in the last kind of couple of years. So that's also something to be aware of. Highly motivated niche audience, that ties into like having to get the magazine because it's got their exams in it that they need to do every year. They are really invested because obviously it's their job, and they, especially if it's something for business owners, like if the publication like lends itself to business owners, they're going to want to keep up with changes in their industries and things. So it really, you get a lot of positive feedback, sometimes negative. They're not quiet. They're not a quiet, unresponsive audience, I'll say, which is encouraging, because obviously that also makes your job easier, because sometimes they'll tell you what they need to know, and they'll want to be featured in things, which we do. We do feature the members extensively, because they make the industry. So yeah, it's nice to have sort of a two-way relationship, rather than it being kind of us just putting things out and not hearing anything back. I don't know if this is my last bullet point, so it might be. Solid ground in a specific area, for example, travel trade for aspiring travel journalists, healthcare membership for healthcare journalists. So this is also something that people don't necessarily know about. If you work on a trade or membership magazine in a specific niche, for example, travel or healthcare, you are kind of across that beat for a couple of years, and you want to go and do that at a less niche publication, a national paper, sort of a better known media brand, then that's going to give you a really solid foundation in which to do that, because you've already worked in it. You've worked in it from a business perspective. So that's really sort of something to talk about in applications and things in the future, if that's where you want to move to. You kind of cut your teeth, I think, at trade and membership magazines a lot, which again is a really, really good thing to know for the future. Next slide. Okay, my day-to-day work, what I actually do. So there's a couple of screen grabs there, pieces that I've worked on relatively recently. That was the top one was a news piece about lockdown screen time. I have a charity beat on the news side of things. So that was for that, a big charity called Fight for Sight that we work with quite a lot. I cover all the charity news. And then the other screen grab is a long read that I think was advertorial. We have long reads, and sometimes people they're paid for and sometimes they're not. And I think that this one was an advertorial for a paying client. 14 minutes. You can see how long that long read was. It might have been up to 3,000 words. My day-to-day, so long form features, I just spoke about. I have a business beat, so I cover the in practice section of the print magazine. So all my features have a business angle focus, and then the other beats within the team are sort of science, the medical side of it, and then industry. So what's happening kind of with suppliers and on the high street and things like that. That's obviously quite businessy as well. Yeah, there are three, and then professional sort of support, which comes a large amount of that comes from the association. So anything that they want to get out, any sort of policy news, any work that they're doing, that goes in the professional support section. So there are 4 beats, and mine is in practice, so it's business focused. It's 10 pages of the magazine, that section. So the magazine is bi-monthly. It used to be monthly. Most of these I would think are monthly. We made ours bi-monthly just as I was joining, just in case there were any problems with advertising during the pandemic. We've kept it that way, and I think it's going to keep that way into next year as well, although we haven't really suffered with advertising, so that's good. So every other month I have the 10 features in the in practice section, but then I'll also, on the month when we don't have a print magazine, I will put them online. So I'll do the features anyway, I'll just put them on, they'll just go online just on the website. And every magazine is themed. I mentioned before the independent prescribing theme that we had for the August-September issue, which the front cover you saw earlier. I also oversee web projects with the web team. So that might be landing page redesign, homepage redesign. We're redesigning our job board, all that kind of thing. So that offers quite a lot of variety as well. As deputy editor, obviously, I'm highly involved in forward planning for next year. Part of that included planning for to like really pivot our content at the outset of COVID, when I just started. So that was a real good challenge for me. I'd kind of been in the job a week and the lockdown started, and I needed to work with the editor to sort of reform all the content for the rest of the year, to make sure it was relevant. So that was another big challenge, which was great. And then I manage the senior reporter and social media exec as well. So I have 2 direct reports. A few of the kind of more specific things I do in the features have my issue-based long reads, which are 2,000-ish words. I do tend to write quite long, so they sometimes go over that. This businesses that thrive are those that adapt to shifts in consumer behaviour. That was one of those. We take a theme or discussion point from the industry and interview loads of people. I've interviewed like 10 people for one feature before, and kind of dig really deeply into that in a long read. I do stories of new business ownership, people who've taken over practices or launched their own businesses. I do a career retrospectives piece from industry leaders, and that doesn't necessarily mean like people who've been in the industry a long time. It might just be people doing quite dynamic things. So for example, there is a guy who has an optometry focused Instagram account where he kind of shares like fundus pictures of the eyes, and sort of interesting pathology that he sees. So he shares it on Instagram. He's got like loads of followers. Can't remember how many, but he featured in that career retrospective section as well a few months ago, because he was doing quite a lot of anti-racism work. So we're able to feature things like that. And this is what I mean about making it kind of interesting. You make it as interesting as you want to make it. So it doesn't need to be kind of, someone who's been in the industry 60 years and has always worked in a practice. It can be someone who's just doing something quite dynamic right now, which is what I try to focus on. And then how-to guides. We have one called How Do I, and another one called Workshop. They're quite similar. They are basically really practical, to the point guides on how to do things. So I did one on making your business dementia friendly, and I worked with the Alzheimer's Society on that. That was, I think, towards the beginning of this year. So that was a really valuable piece to work on as well. I spoke to, I think it was maybe someone from Specsavers who had done that, and yeah, created that piece, which went down really well. 5-step sort of business or healthcare initiatives. So this is the front screen grab with that lady Sarah. She is the director of engagement for a big charity called Fight for Sight, who we do a lot with, and they did a massive sort of 18-month long piece of research. It obviously took 18 months. It was really extensive, and that's now being used to like lobby government to invest more money in eye care, because eye care is the most cost efficient way to relieve poverty, which obviously I don't need to tell anyone is a really important thing to try and alleviate. So I spoke to her about putting that research together, and what she plans to do now with that. So that was obviously a initiative, and that's the key milestone speech that also happens in every edition. And then we also have a sort of the pre-reg year, when you've graduated from university in optometry. You do like effectively like a sandwich, like a year in industry, but you don't go back to uni afterwards. They do that. So we have 3 regular writers who are commissioned at the beginning of their placements, and they write for us every month as well. So we're kind of covering the beginnings of people being in the industry at the same time. That's my regular features that I am working on all the time. How to get a role like this. So it's not going to be overly different to how you get any journalism role. I wouldn't have thought. Maybe there's some slight differences. I think, as I've spoken about before, the digital skills are really important. So identifying your digital skills and what you can bring in order to progress these kind of publications and make them a bit dynamic, because I think in my experience that's what editors are looking for, alongside the traditional skills like the reporting, the willingness to get on the phone, that kind of thing. I found I found this placement and then another placement. So obviously I didn't know that this role was going to go back to part-time. So I was looking for another sort of 2-day-week job, and ended up getting another one through the same recruiter with a different healthcare organisation, which I subsequently didn't take because this one went full-time. So I chose this one and chose to stay where I was. But that recruiter got me both jobs, and then my other placements that I've had have come through recruiters as well. So speaking to them is so important. They're the two that I would highly recommend are Stopgap and an editorial recruitment agency called Folio, and the main woman there is called Penny, and she's my personal hero. She has done so much for me in the last couple of years. So just in terms of contacting editorial recruitment agencies, I sort of went on a spree of going into recruiters when I was being made redundant, which was a good shout. The recruiters that have done the most for me and have know who I am and can give me the best placements are the ones that I physically went in to see. I know that people are not necessarily in London or in cities, or maybe you won't have recruiters on your doorstep, but I would recommend, if you can't physically book an appointment to go in and see them, definitely get on the phone and speak to them and make sure that they are kind of the people that you're make sure you're in their head when they have suitable roles for you, and tell them what kind of roles you want. And think, because membership organizations, they are quite secure in their sort of budgets and things. They've got money to go out to recruiters, so they will do. So that'll be sort of the first port of call. So you might not see the jobs necessarily advertised as much because they don't need to, because they put them out to recruiters who go to the people they already know. So I would recommend just getting to know recruiters. I also spoke to Aspire, and I can't remember the names of the other ones that I've spoken to, but there are a few. If you look for editorial recruiters, you'll find a whole bunch. I wouldn't recommend anything more highly than speaking to recruiters. They will basically sort your life out for you. I've not had to do anything other than slightly touch up my CV when I've applied for these roles, and then obviously go for an interview. I think I've had to write a cover letter once. So it really does save you a lot of time. So would highly recommend that. Also sign up to Cision job alerts and LinkedIn job alerts, because again, it's a bit more corporate and businessy. They'll come through LinkedIn. Research publications that are hiring, I think by that I just mean keep an eye on it. Just stay on top of it. Make sure you just at least scan the sort of the Cision email and sort of job boards and stuff. Just keep checking in, because they will be there, and you'll find them. And if you know what's been advertised, start to see the same jobs coming up again and again. So I'll just keep it in your mind. Consider short-term contracts. I would never tell people to shy away from taking a short-term contract because they're worried about stability, because obviously, as I've said, I take short-term contracts and never leave. So in my experience, they really can turn into something longer term. I mean, when I worked at the radio station, that was supposed to be 3 months. I ended up staying there 5. When I went to the university, that was extended. That should have finished at Christmas, and I was there until April, and I got a copywriting contract as well through them, so which I finished at the same time as starting the deputy editor cover at Optometry Today. So things lead into other things. So I would never kind of think I need to keep looking for a full-time permanent job. I can't take this 3-month contract, because you don't know where that 3-month contract is going to go. I would also consider shift work, especially this summer. I've noticed quite a lot of trade magazines and membership magazines as well, particularly in healthcare. That's probably because that's what I was looking for, because that's the industry I'm in. Were offering quite a lot of shift work, so I would also take that. I did shift work. Well, I did senior reporter cover at OT before I became the deputy editor, so that obviously was helpful. And then sort of general edit your CV for every role, keep track of all your applications. I tend to create a new CV for everything that I apply for, because that helps me keep track. And obviously you can just rename it with the job title, which is going to be specific to that job, rather than just keeping it generic. So I just duplicate it. Don't be afraid to chase. And I don't know what my last point is, because I've covered it with the boxes, and I don't know if I can. Anyway, whatever that last point was. Okay, I don't know what's going on.
You okay, Lucy?
It's not moving back.
I think you may have paused something. It's moving around on our side.
Oh.
Do you want me to share the screen instead?
Yeah, if you want to. It's I'm getting a.
I'll try. Yeah, don't worry, I'll do that. And then I'll. So it's working here, and I'll stop. Do you want to take over again?
Yes. Maybe go back to, if you're sharing it, can I?
Yep, happy to.
Okay. Research specific industries ahead of interviews. Yeah, just know about, if you're going for a healthcare membership interview, know about a little bit about healthcare. Oh, Camille, now I can see your face. You're going to make me laugh. Yeah, so they asked me why I wanted to work within healthcare, and I can't remember what I said, but I mean, I did want to, so that helped. So it does help if you've got a sort of an existing interest. Yeah, Camille, do you want to move me on to the next one? There we go. There's a screen grab of the Optometry Today homepage. You can see my name a little bit all over that. That's that lady at the top. She's an optometrist who works for us part-time, doing like multimedia stuff. She's like a video multimedia person. So she is there profiled for our like career retrospective piece, because she's got a lot going on. So yeah, that's just an example in practice of what I was just talking about. Where you can find these kind of roles. This is kind of what I've talked about already, but just to recap, editorial comms, and also and sorry about that, marketing recruiters, folio, recruitment, which is based in both these are in London, because obviously that's where I am, but in Fulham, that one's in Fulham, and then Stopgap is in Richmond. But you don't need to be, they have national roles, so you don't need to be there. You can just get in contact with them, and that's fine. LinkedIn Incision, job alerts, and then for shift work and sort of shorter term contracts, there are various job newsletters which everyone should be signed up to. So there's one called Freelance Writing Jobs, and then Journo Resources run by Jem Collins, and also there's Media Beans.
And PressPad newsletter, if you're not already.
I mean, I hope everyone signed up to PressPad's newsletter. Yes, PressPad too. Obviously follow PressPad. And then specific editors on Twitter. Anytime I see an editor that I think might be interesting to me, I just follow them. Because you never know what's going to pop up. I've got quite a few commissions just because editors have tweeted something specific, and I've just kind of jumped on it. So yeah, next slide, please. I feel like Boris. Do you remember the COVID briefings?
I remember that too well.
I'd locked that out, I think. Anyway, why are these opportunities less? I'll just take the elephant in the room is that people think they're really boring. Well, I've had fun for the last year and a half, so I would like to point out that they're not boring. They don't have to be. I think part of it comes from, obviously it's very niche and little known. Optometry is not something that I had thought about in any way whatsoever. I did not have glasses when I interviewed with them. These are very much lockdown screen induced, as I'm sure everyone will imagine is a big debate in that industry at the moment. People don't necessarily know about the magazines, but people know that they're quite niche and they have a business focus, so people might think that's a bit dry, which is fair enough. They're less prestigious than, obviously, more traditional media like the newspapers. That is just the truth of it. I don't think that they're necessarily pushed by sort of university or career department, like college career departments. They should be, because they're quite good places for you to like get your skills down. But unfortunately they're not. So people don't necessarily know about them. And like I've said before, they just might be seen just a bit boring or less dynamic. But I think that this kind of area of publishing is really making efforts to not be. So they should be lauded for that, I think. And then some just more specific things that I've worked on that have been quite interesting. I've done a couple of long form features on various aspects of technology in the industry, sort of where that's going, the pioneers in that, how people can use that for their own business purposes. Exclusives, we did a thing which I spoke about how investing in eye care could save billions of pounds in the coming decades. Sorry, it was flying from my face. So that was an exclusive, which obviously could have sort of wide-ranging implications. So I was really happy to work on that, and I managed to get both the exclusive news piece and then that feature that I spoke about before out of that as well. So that was good. I have been sending off some questions to Paralympians this week for them to answer by email, obviously because of the time difference. Obviously focusing on the visually impaired ones because it's optics. So that would be great. It's really nice to send off some questions to someone and then see them win a gold medal. So I'm hoping for some answers back for that. And then, as I said before, redesigned web and landing pages and done various other web projects like personalization. I'm working on like a color coding project for the website at the moment. Pivoting the content plans for the rest of the year when the first lockdown came in was a challenge and an interesting one. Obviously, when you've got advertisers and you've got a print magazine schedule and you've got to kind of rip that up without knowing how long the changes will last or how things are going to go down is quite an interesting place to be, and something that I kind of think about when people ask me about a challenge that I've had kind of in my role. And then our amazing senior reporter has got a sort of COVID generation series, which is for optometry students and the pre-registration graduates who are doing their placement year. So I've been helping her with that as well. Although I will not take any credit for it because she is 100% owning that. But it's kind of, just as an editor, guiding where needed on that as well. And that's been really in depth and long form. So that has been really, really great. And then, as I mentioned before, we did a few months ago some coverage of racism within the industry, and also we work with the association on various things. So we worked with them to kind of put pages in place on the website and develop kind of a policy and support systems for members. Obviously, when we are the part of the organisation that has a direct line to the members because it's a magazine and they can speak to us through that, which other parts might not necessarily have. So that was a good opportunity for us to really speak to members and work out what they wanted from that. So that was great too. Next slide, please. I don't know how long I've taken. What time is it? Nearly a full hour. So this is my I told you I overwrite and I overtalk. This is just my summary slide, really. Things that I've basically said already. In summary, it's a good, these kind of places are a good alternative option for those who want a journalism role that has stability and long-term prospects. They kind of want to promote people within, and in my experience, want to kind of elevate people's careers within, without necessarily, you know, fitting into a very defined structure. I mean, the structure is defined, but they want people to like live within it. So that's really good to see. And I don't think that they have any sort of objections to building the sort of the roles around the people rather than what the existing titles are, if that makes sense. Strong desire for digital as well as traditional reporting skills. So people fresh out of uni are sort of in a good position with these kind of things. As I said before about video and social media and stuff. Huge variety of publications and areas of interest. I mean, there's literally a membership magazine or a trade magazine for every single industry, whatever, whatever your interests are. Then there will be a publication for it. So if you're really interested in something, especially if it's quite niche, I mean, just reach out to editors. The worst they can do is ignore you. I mean, and then nothing happens. So you might as well just bother people. Yeah, we love bothering people. It's yeah, solid option. We know the industry is unpredictable, and I don't think anyone wants to hear the word pivot ever again. But that's what happens. So like being somewhere that can kind of ward against that is a good thing. Solid training for those with reporter ambitions, freedom to experiment with social media and video concepts in a low risk environment, which you might not be allowed to do at a more well-known brand. That's also quite valuable. A chance to understand how journalism can work alongside a communications department. I mentioned this earlier. There's a slight difference, and I think it's valuable to be able to see like the comms side of it as opposed to just the journalism chasing down any like the story and doing whatever you can to get it kind of angle. You have to be a bit more careful and a bit more nuanced, which I would tell people going into this kind of area that they need to be aware of, because it is a difference. And I think that comes with working with any clients in general. If you're sort of working on like a bit of marketing, like advertorial and things, you can't go like shouting down the phone to chase down what you need and get the quote. You have to be a bit more careful about it, which people might not know about. So it's good to know that. And then, as I said before, it's good money, which is important. And I don't think anyone should kind of feel that because they've gone into journalism they should have to be paid a pittance, because that is not true. And it's often difficult to know that. So I'm telling you, you don't have to be. And I will not have these kind of deputy editor roles that you see advertised at like 24k, because that is not what it needs to be. And I will leave that there. Do I have another slide? I cannot remember. Questions. There we go. We've got 2 minutes.
Oh, we've got a bit longer if people want to stick around.
Go over.
I won't cut you off. So feel free, if you haven't sent your question already, feel free to send it over, either just directly to me or to everyone, and I'll just read it out. First question: you said you had an interest in healthcare. Could you tell us whether you had actually written anything or it was just a general interest before you went into optometrist today?
So I wrote stuff about cancer, which is obviously in no way aligned. But I wrote a piece for Grazia, and I wrote a piece for Grazia, which is my first freelance commission. And then I did some work with a charity called the Eve Appeal, where I did some like speaking for them and things. And I'd kind of thought, if I do have a contract, it'd be nice to be somewhere in healthcare, because that feels like quite a valuable space to be in. Obviously, that kind of thing was not directly related at all to optics, especially like the business side of optics. So it's incredibly tenuous. But I did say to them, I'm interested in being in healthcare because I think like it's a valuable space to be in, and I think I can bring value to it. Even though my experience wasn't directly related, that was kind of enough for them. So I just kind of, just told them that I thought it was a valuable sector to be in. And that was it.
I've got another question, which is, are you allowed to freelance for others, non-competing publications in your role?
So in my old contract, it said that I wasn't allowed to, but I got it taken out because I was part. So I did a bit of freelancing when I was full-time as deputy editor the first time around. I don't know if it was in my contract then, but then I went down, so I had my contract reissued because I went down to 3 days a week after Christmas. And when I read my reissued contract, it said that I couldn't freelance. So I queried that and they said, that's not a problem, you can, so I had been doing, obviously. I don't know if I was full-time, whether they would have said that. They kind of said, yeah, of course you can, you're working for us 3 days a week, so that isn't a problem. You need to fill the other time. Now I'm full-time. I don't think it is in my new contract. I can't remember.
It's a conversation you can have with people anyway. That's not something that is off limit as a conversation, especially in publishing. You can have that. It's the same thing in any creative industry. You can have that conversation when you need to with your manager. Oh my God, we're getting quite a few questions in. Lucy, everybody's on fire. So such a great presentation. Thank you. Well, I completely agree. Do publications insist on journalism qualifications? That's a really good one.
I love this question. It's not the first time I've answered it.
It's not the first time we've talked about this either.
I have a two-pronged answer to this question. Nowhere that I have worked has asked about my NCTJ. However, I've always been glad I've had it, particularly for the law side of it. Haven't used shorthand since the exam, but I know that people do. I think an NCTJ is really valuable. For me, the law side of things has been the most important thing. There isn't, particularly when I was at the National Student, not particularly in this job, although still quite often this job. But in my old role, I don't think that week went past where I didn't use my media law. I probably used it daily. I use it less here because we're covering probably like less controversial things, but I still do use it. Like I used it this week because I got a press release from a charity who'd done some work to sort of expose an exam platform for not being accessible to visually impaired people. So I was like, ooh, better make sure this is all backed up by my media law. So yeah, I literally used it this week. It's been by far the most important thing for me, the law aspect, and I've never not been glad that I've got my NCTJ, even if no one has ever asked about it.
So you do, on my side, from experience, because obviously I was also made redundant from the National Student and I've had to look for the role. And then like Lucy, I didn't have an NCTJ because I was French. And we don't have that qualification exactly. I have found that it is asked a fair bit when it's quite competitive. So when, yes, I agree, you don't have a name, but you say, isn't the only qualification you can have, you're happy with no NCTJ, but qualification otherwise. Yes, I agree with that, but this is the one that we've both got experience in, so we'll be talking about that and not something we don't
about.
But they do get that in also when I was looking into the army publications, BFPS, they were requesting specifically qualifications for that, so you will get it sometimes, and sometimes you don't get it. So
traditional media will ask for it, so newspapers will ask for it. I think digital, if you're a digital writer for newspapers, they'll ask for it as well. Magazines won't necessarily ask for it. What I will say, my last point on that is, I know some universities, and this is not a new thing, this has been years and years, some universities, I think City is included in that, don't run the NCTJ as part of their journalism degrees, but they're well respected enough that they don't need to, because you know, if you get a City grad, they're going to be like really, really good, because City gives them that level of training. So they don't feel the need to have NCTJ accreditation for their courses, but I think they are in the minority. I think a few of the universities have done it as well. I don't want to say which ones, but you just kind of have to make that call. If you're going to the best university for like an MA in journalism, then I won't worry about NCTJ really.
Another question, do you often take on freelance writing in the role? Well, freelance writers, sorry. So do you often take freelance writers on as your role is deputy editor?
We haven't really used freelancers now, sorry. We will if we need to. Obviously they hired me as a freelancer because I was doing a senior reporter cover because someone had left. So someone had left, the senior reporter had left, there was a month, they hired someone, but she couldn't start for a month, so she worked a notice period. They had a month gap, they needed someone to fill that gap, so I was freelance senior reporter there before I started as deputy editor. But that's like for specific reasons. I have seen a number of trade and membership publications, the editors have been asking for freelance reporters over this summer on Twitter, so I know it happens. I think it's for specific reasons. I don't think we wouldn't do it sort of day to day, but to be quite honest, because we're well resourced, if we weren't, then maybe we would. But it's quite a well structured team, so we don't really. And like I commission pieces, but it's more like PR, so people will write them like from a PR perspective rather than me commissioning a freelance journalist to write it, if that makes sense.
Another question, when you were a freelancer, you're still freelancing though, so that'll probably still apply.
Hybrid.
Did you have an indemnity insurance, or do you think it's unnecessary?
I haven't had it. I mean, I probably should have done.
It is requested in some contracts, isn't it? When you freelance, if you sign a contract, some publication, they will require that from you.
So I think it's a good thing to get. I've never got it. What I will say to my contracts, I've gone on PAYE. So this contract, the maternity cover, when I was at the university and when I was at the radio station, I went on PAYE. So I wasn't paid as a freelancer then. And then my other freelance work has been like one-off commissions, which I haven't had a contract for because it's been like one-off. So the email acts as kind of an implied contract when they've said how much they're going to pay you and stuff. I also actually do freelance at the moment for like a comms company also in healthcare, and I have a contract with them, and I don't have insurance, but I don't think I would get sued through it because I don't think I'll say anything like defamatory. They cover themselves because they get consent forms for everything from the case studies. So no, I don't have it, but I haven't felt scared by not having it. But at the same time, it's always good to have insurance, isn't it? I just, yeah.
Depends on the type of work you do, doesn't it? If you write a lot of opinion pieces and you write a lot of first person or news based work, it probably is a good thing to have. But if you work on a different type of work, it may not be necessarily what you need.
If your contract saying that they want you to have it, I would just get it. I don't think it's very expensive. You can get discounts, I think, like if you're a member of like the IPSI independent, I don't know what I'm talking about, I can't remember the acronym. But yeah, I would get it if you feel like you need it.
And then last question, unless something else pops up, is about your experience. So when you were working as an editor before, but it was a smaller publication, do you think it's a big leap if you're working on a small publication, but voluntary, to become an editor of a trade publication?
Yes. Just working voluntarily, so like not being paid and being an editor.
I
Okay.
would say, I think that's you've got your own. I think the question is, I've got my own platform with a few other people.
Oh, right.
I am volunteer. I'm editing that platform. How
Yeah.
big of a leap is it?
I think it's quite a big leap, because obviously if you're running something yourself, you've then this kind of role, you then fit into an existing organization, and you'll have to kind of fit into an existing structure, which might be quite difficult if you've used to being in charge of something. I think that if you fit the skills that are laid out in the job description, you should definitely try. I think anything is an adjustment, but I can't see any reason why you sort of wouldn't be able to do it if you've got that like entrepreneurial streak that means you've been running something yourself. It's just about your personality and whether you think that you would want to then be managed, if that makes sense. I think that will probably be the biggest adjustment. I think, yeah, I think you can do it. I think you just have to be aware of your own personality and whether you want it.
There's also the leap. I think for me, I would say, is when you're between what you think you've done in that environment, which is all probably ad hoc that you've created from scratch, and then an environment where you have to fit in that has processes and ways that, like, maybe industry standards and so on,
Yeah.
that you're not used to. That might be a bit difficult if you have no experience there, or you don't necessarily know what to expect. So you may not have as big a chance to get that role because of that. It doesn't mean you won't get it, as Lucy said, but it might be a bit of a leap there.
Yeah, I think the industry standard thing is the most important point, really. You fitting into something that's got rules, whereas before if you're able to kind of do what you wanted to do, that's a bit of an adjustment. But I think that you can adjust to it. I think you just need to be like aware that you might have to like bite your tongue on things, because if you're used to like being in charge, and then things might not necessarily make sense to you. Like, for example, this is a really minor point, but I really hate our style guide. And it makes no sense to me. But I mean, I could change it. I haven't changed it, but like, it's not up to me to change it. Whereas if I'm freelancing, or like working on my own things, or the national student, like I could make that call. Whereas I can't necessarily make that call now. And you have to like know what is in your like realm of like control and what isn't, if that makes sense.
Totally. And it's like being a big fish in a small pond, or small fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
Something like that. Just situation. Well, I can't see any other questions. Let me just check on last time. But I think this is it, Lucy. The only thing,
thank you.
the only thing I've got left to do is to talk about the speed networking event, which is on Tuesday at 7 p.m. You can register on Eventbrite. Please do. For some reason, people are not taking up that opportunity to meet loads of people around the UK at the moment, which is probably due to Zoom fatigue from the feedback we're getting. However, if you want to meet different people with very different backgrounds, I would really, really encourage you to do that. It's very friendly and absolutely lovely. Every Wednesday at lunch, 12 p.m., we interview someone in the media. And this week, Mark is interviewing Zisha Salim, and I'm quite looking forward to that one. It's always, again, very informal, quite lovely. On Instagram, you click on the live button and you just watch Mark or Laura talk to some absolutely lovely people. And then next week, same time, Masterclass. Daniela, who obviously Lucy you know as well because she was one of our writers as a national student and she now works with PressPad, is going to talk about making the most of joining a student publication because Freshers Week is coming and uni is coming back, whether it's in person or online, who knows. But talking about student publications is really important to us, and we want to make sure that you get what it means for your potential career. And Daniela is the editor-in-chief of the, I can't say the name of the university properly because I'm French, Strathclyde.
Right. Strathclyde.
Right. And it's going to be and she's lovely as well, so you're going to love it. You have to come, even if you're not a student anymore. Just come along. And this is all from me. Thank you everyone for joining today. You've really been such an active audience. It's been absolutely lovely. And obviously thank you so much, Lucy, for your time and your smile and all your knowledge. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you. I've loved it. It's great. Thank you for all the questions. And thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.